I'm just waiting for Brian to come on, and then we'll be ready to go.
Okay. Good enough. Holler when you're ready.
Okay. It is now 3:31. We'd like to start and welcome everybody to the Roy City Council meeting for April 6th. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Let me just recognize and welcome everybody. I recognize we got Council Member Paul, Council Member Wilson, Council Member Jackson, and Council Member Burrell. And I see Council Member Brian is just come on. I'd like to just read, if I can, for the record. Roy City has, as of 2 days ago or yesterday, 87 active COVID-19 cases in the last 14 days. With that, I, Mayor Robert Dando, in accordance with the Utah Code Section 52-3-207-4, have determined that conducting a meeting in the Roy City Council chamber presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who would be present at the City Council chambers. The basis of this determination is that due to the infectious nature and potential dangerous health effects of contracting the COVID-19 virus, there's not sufficient space in the council chambers to provide appropriate, safe physical distancing for the safety of individuals who would attend. Accordingly, on this date, April 6, 2021, this meeting will be held electronically without an anchor location. So with that, again, welcome. Appreciate everybody being with us and those who are watching. I've asked Council Member Paul if you'll go ahead and lead us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If you'll please join me in a moment of silence. All right, thank you. And then if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, Councilmember Paul. Okay, we do have some consent items, specifically the approval of the January 19th Roy City work session minutes and February 16th, 2021. And then we also have the Roy City meeting minutes of March 2nd of 2021, as well as the work session minutes of those dates. We also have the approval of the new business advisory board member, Miss Annette Mifflin. Council, any questions or comments about these consent items? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion then to approve the consent items as stated?
So
Okay, Diane, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Ann, thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, thank you. It's approved. Okay, we do have some action items we need to walk through. First one will be Employee of the Month. Andy, Matt, who's going to talk to us about the Employee of the Month?
I'm going to take care of that, Mayor.
Thank you.
Council, tonight I want to recognize as Employee of the Month, Steve Parkinson. I mean, he's done a heck of a lot of work on the mixed use ordinance, amongst other things. And this isn't necessarily just for what's been done in this month. I'd like to tell you about things that he's accomplished since he's been here. Now, he started out in 2016, and between that time and up to the present, on his own initiative, he's written grant applications. 2014? Well, we missed a few years. We could end that tonight if you'd like, Steve. Since he's been here, on his own initiative, he's written grant applications that have resulted in the city receiving $1,119,000 and $1,119.50. He's also been involved in helping other departments in this city in getting grants where we've got an additional $1,092,000 in grants that the city has received. Included in those, we did the Focus Roy, Complete Streets, General Plan Upgrade, Mixed Use. He came up with a method for us to recoup our engineering costs from developers. And that was pretty significant too, because in the past that was a cost that just came out of the city, but that is now part of what the developer has to pay when they come here with a project. And I'd like to say, I don't know of any other planners who have done these kind of things. And most, I don't think people are aware of everything that he does behind the scenes. And I mean, it's really been quite a help financially for the city. A few more things. A few years ago, when the state legislature enacted the Land Use Management or Development Management Act, IRMA requested, told all their cities that, we had to be compliant. And there were a lot of things that had to be done to that. And Steve jumped right on that. And I think we were the first of all the IRMA cities who were compliant with those requirements. And that was because he just jumped in and started on it and got going. So he's just always been a self-starter, hard worker. He's here from 8 to 5 every day, just going full tilt. He revised Title 12 to bring our flood management in compliance with the FEMA requirements and NFIP requirements. He adopted that or did the resolution for the Complete Streets policy, and been working on the general plan and adopting that Focus Roy program. Created a new RE15 zone for the city, and then he's done all this work, developed that moderate income housing plan. Now somebody's ringing my doorbell, wouldn't you know it? But we'll step past that.
Your dog's gonna bark.
Here's just some of the things too that he's worked on since he's been here. Ordinances for signs, chickens, pet grooming, domestic fowl and livestock, warehouse, self-storage, car washes, standards for swimming pools, food trucks, outdoor storage of RVs, fencing, and like I said, recently mixed use. Also, during this time period, we've had a couple of annexations. So back in 2017, there was a lot of work. Steve just really, covered all kinds of things for us. We brought in 3 unincorporated islands at that time. We had some protests on the others, but a couple of years, well, I think it was 1 year later, is we came back again. And that time, Steve was instrumental in bringing in 6 new unincorporated islands into Roy City. And those are things that have been sitting there for years. These islands should have been incorporated in Roy, and it only made sense to do that. But without Steve being here to push all that through, it probably still wouldn't have happened. So I just wanted that he be recognized for everything he's accomplished. So that was my nomination for you tonight.
Hey, great nomination, Andy. Thank you. Council, any comments, questions?
Thanks, Steve, for putting up with this with all of our changes. Sounds like you deserve a raise to me after hearing everything you've done.
Okay. Then can I ask then a motion that we recognize Steve Parkinson from the City Council as being the Employee of the Month?
So moved.
Dan, thank you. Okay, do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, Brian, I've seen a second on that. All in favor to recognize Steve Parkinson as the Employee of the Month for April 2021. Would you say aye?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Hearing none. Steve, congratulations. Okay, great job. Council, do you want to make any personal comments to Steve's effort?
Yeah, I already
Thank
told
you for
about it.
putting it in writing to make it
Yeah.
so we can understand it in writing.
In answering all my dumb questions when I asked you. You're pretty knowledgeable. I can tell you that right now.
Okay.
And thanks for making me your 5th favorite council member.
Oh, you got a raise there, Brian.
No, just all there is 5.
Yeah, good comment, Brian. Steve, thank you. Just a yeoman's effort. Just incredible what you've been able to do and got done. And I know it isn't always easy, but the fact of the matter is you made it happen. And so we appreciate that. And Andy, thank you for taking the time as a supervisor to recognizing achievement. Sometimes that's the most important thing we can do, is to recognize the great achievement that our people provide. And so thank you for doing that. Steve is surely worthy of that, and he's worthy of a lot more. So we do appreciate Steve and his efforts and your ability to recognize his achievements. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's move on. We got a public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 budget opening, and we're going to ask Camille, as we always do when it talks about budget and other important things, to talk to us. So please, Camille.
Mayor and Council, it's great to be here with you tonight to talk about Resolution 21-9 for your consideration. This will amend the fiscal year 2021 budget by $1,726,195. The Resolution 21-9 proposes an increase to our sales tax revenue of 10% or $497,000. Sales tax had been coming in higher than initially budgeted during the first 8 months of the year. This last month, it leveled off. We're still unsure of how the stimulus money impacted our sales tax, so we'll continue to watch that closely each month and come back with adjustments as necessary. This resolution also includes recognition of some grant awards that we received and the corresponding expenditures. There were 3 grant awards. One was for Youth Court for $7,500. One was a Fire EMS grant for $4,638. And the last was a JAG Police grant to purchase firearm optics for $6,600. In the general fund, we are also proposing to increase the Parks and Recreation budget by $14,000. This is for an additional fertilizer application at all of our parks. It was initially cut out of our original budget, so we want to put that back in there, along with $4,500 to purchase some helmets for our football helmet rotation program. We have the opportunity to purchase these at a discount, so we thought it was a great opportunity for us to take advantage of that. If you remember, a few months ago, you approved a purchase for fire turnout gear of $133,000. This initial budget was in the Capital Projects Fund, utilizing the Fire Equipment Fund balance. But as we've moved forward with this purchase, and in talking to Chief Golden, we've decided that this equipment is better purchased individually than in sets. So for example, rather than purchase one set, they would like to purchase the boots separate from the gloves, separate from the jackets. So if a jacket is damaged, they can just replace that portion instead of replacing the whole turnout set. So based on this, it's no longer appropriate for us to account for it the way we had. So this proposal would move it to the general fund and allow us to pay for it out of the general fund as equipment, so we can replace each piece individually rather than have it as a capital project all in one place. So this isn't additional money, it's just moving the funding source to the general fund. We're also proposing decreasing the police capital assets budget by $61,500 and including that with the remaining amount of the excess sales tax to move a transfer to the capital projects fund. So the total transfer to the capital projects fund would be $407,292. Of this, $352,000 would be used to purchase 7 police vehicles, 3 would be administrative, and 4 for patrol officers. $15,000 of this transfer would be used to repair and reseal the public works shop floor to protect it against the salt from the snowplow equipment. And the other capital purchase coming from this transfer is $19,000 to replace our big printer scanner plotter down at Public Works that we use to print blueprints and plat maps and some of those larger items. This would leave about $21,127 of that transfer from the sales tax that's set aside in fund balance that we will bring back to you to appropriate at a future date. In the capital projects fund, we're also proposing an $80,000 use of the fund balance reserve for parks and recreational facilities to complete the pole barn at the recreation building. And as I mentioned earlier, we previously approved $133,000 in the capital projects fund for that turnout gear for the fire equipment. With the proposal to move that to the general fund, we propose that you reallocate that along with an additional $32,000 from the fire fund balance to purchase an additional ambulance. This would replace one of our other ambulances that is in need of replacement. In the original adopted budget, there was $225,000 approved for an ambulance to be replaced. We've been waiting on that just to make sure that we really did have the funds. With COVID. As you know, our revenues were unsure. They would like to move forward not only with that purchase, but with the purchase of a second ambulance to replace both of those at this time. So if you approve this budget opening, it would bring the total approved to $390,000 to purchase those two ambulances. This will allow us to start the process to procure the new ambulances, but capital vehicle purchases right now, like the ambulances and the police vehicles that you would approve, sometimes take us months to actually take possession of. So there's a chance that we won't actually take possession of these vehicles until into the new fiscal year. But this gives the opportunity for police and fire to start that procurement process to get them ordered. And fire is going to consider various types of ambulances in their procurement process and make sure that they get one that can best serve the citizens of Roy and determine which one will best fit our needs. Most likely it will be the type 1 ambulance that we currently have. So they want to have a chance to go out to RFP, so that will take time, and that's why we're recommending doing it now instead of waiting until July 1st for the new budget. In the water and sewer utility fund, we're proposing a use of fund balance reserves of $260,831. $150,000 of this will be used to purchase water meters. That will finish out our water meter replacement project and give us the meters that we need so water can continue moving forward on that project so that we can move to monthly billing once they're finished. The budget opening also includes funding to cover the cost of relocating a portion of the city's water line. This is related to the North Davis Sewer District's 5600 South Sewer Line replacement. The original estimated cost of relocating the water line was approximately $400,000. So the contractor they chose was diligent in trying to protect our existing water line where possible. And Councilmember Paul negotiated with North Davis Sewer District Board to split the actual cost. So in the end, we're asking for the council to fund an additional $110,831 for the cost of relocating that water line. In the solid waste utility fund, we are proposing $100,000 use of fund balance reserve to cover the transfer station costs associated with our dumpster programs. We've also included a use of fund balance reserves in the Class C road funds to cover $100,000 in additional citywide maintenance for curb, gutter, and sidewalks, and $230,000 for the purchase of a 10-wheel dump truck. The original adopted budget in the Park Development Fund included $60,000 for park amenities. We are proposing in this resolution that you reallocate $42,245 of that funding to be used for our match portion for the ramp grant we received for the dog park. This isn't any additional funding. We're just proposing reallocating money that was set aside for park amenities to use as our match. So with this, we recommend that you receive public input and consider approval of Resolution 21-9.
Thank you, Camille. With that, council, I do need to have then a motion to enter in a public hearing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Jan, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll
Yes.
second.
Diane, thank you. Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're now in a public hearing. Morgan, do we have anybody that has an interest in wanting to talk about this budget from the public?
Can you hear me?
Yes, uh-huh.
Oh, good. No, Mayor, I did not get any request to speak during the public hearing.
Okay. Okay, hearing none then. Do I have a motion then to go out of public hearing?
So moved.
Jan, thank you. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Ann, thank you. Okay, all in favor going out of a public hearing? Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, we are now out of public hearing. Council, do you have any questions for Camille? Anything you want to ask her before we ask you to approve this resolution?
I appreciate her hard work. She's put a lot of time and effort into this. I've spoke with Matt multiple times on different things, and it's equated to a great change, and Camille's done a great work. So
Thank you. Diane, you raised your hand, please.
Hello, Camille. I was wondering why they decided to go ahead and do both ambulances right now. You hear of people or of departments usually overlapping vehicles, and I was just wondering what the reasoning behind that was.
Yes, absolutely. So right now, as we mentioned, one was actually due for replacement last July, so almost a year ago. And then one would be due this upcoming July. So they were supposed to be about a year apart. By doing the RFP and procuring two at once, we're also hoping that we can get more competitive pricing and be able to purchase both of them for a better price than we would if we just did one ambulance.
Good question, Diane.
Comment, thanks, Joe, too, for the negotiation on the 5600 water project. Thank you.
That worked out good.
Oh, I see that we did get the grant for the dog park then, and we just have to match it. So we did get that approved then.
Yes,
So
so
that's awesome.
it is. It would be great. So it's a 50-50 grant. So we would need to contribute our match portion.
Good job.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, council, with Camille?
One quick question back on the ambulance. How often do they replace the ambulances?
Chief Golden, do you want to speak to that?
I can, yes. We got them on a rotation. They're front line for 3 years. And then basically they go into a reserve for usually 2 to 3, depending on how many miles they get. But no more than 7 years. We just put too many miles on them. We put over nearly 40,000 on one ambulance in just over a year. So there's a lot of miles put on them, a lot of use, and then they end up spending it in the shop more after the first 2 to 3 years. They spend more time in the shop than they do if we keep them on front line.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Okay, other comments? Okay, Camille, thank you. A great rundown. You were very specific in terms of definitizing all the requirements. I was watching, hearing your words and reading the documentation you provided in advance of that. So it was very helpful. Thank you. Okay, with that then, council, do I have a motion then to approve resolution 20-9? It's a budget to the adjustment to the fiscal year 21 budget.
so
I'll
moved.
make a motion that we approve 20-9, making the amendments to the budget.
Thank you. Adjourn, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Ann, I've got a second. And Morgan, this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Burrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Perfect. Thank you, council, for approving that. We now have public comments. Morgan, do we have anybody who'd like to make public comments to the council?
Say that question one more time, Mayor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're in the public comment period. Do you have anybody that is interested in making public comments to the council?
No, I did not receive any requests.
Okay, no public comment. Okay, we're out of then the public comment period. We have some discussion items. Just want to kind of cover a couple of these things, council, with you. As you may be, we'll start with the one dealing with establishing some type of an ordinance or resolution to restrict culinary irrigation water usage if necessary. As you may have been hearing, both the governor and it's coming now from the water districts, we're going to be in another tight year in terms of drought. There should be no surprise to you. There's a lot of evidence to that. The question we need to ask is, and we've been working with Andy to kind of see how we might be able to approach this, but the question is does the council want to consider putting out some type of a resolution, some type of notification to encourage people to not waste water in Roy City? What's your thoughts on that?
You mean people that don't have Weaver Basin water and just use their culinary water? Is that what you're talking about?
We have both in the city. Obviously, some people do use both the secondary water from Roy Water Conservative District, as well as some use the Weaver District, Water Basin District water as culinary water to water their yards. That's correct. And so the water district, the Roy Conservative Water District, does a pretty good job trying to manage that side. But we've really not done anything on the culinary side that for people that are using culinary water to water their yards. And so the issue here would be is, does the council believe we need to maybe look at some ideas, come up back with something that helps us to remind the people that there's importance of making sure we conserve water? That's the issue in the conversation here.
Have we ever put in our monthly magazine about not watering every day and don't water between 10 and 6? Have we ever noted that they shouldn't do that?
Matt, I will tell you, I believe there is, in fact, on a number of occasions where we do the reminder. That is correct.
Okay.
We can do that a little stronger if we wanted to basically do an ordinance or we want to do a resolution. But this is more just a dialogue to talk about what would you like to do if we find ourselves in a situation where we're being asked to basically be a little more formal in terms of asking people to be a little more conservative in the use of water.
So Mayor, the question I would have on that is, if we formalize it, are we obligated, I guess, to enforce it? And if we are obligated to enforce it, then how does that enforcement look, and what are the costs of that enforcement?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a bad idea to follow the direction of the state, which was our governor certainly said that we want to all be mindful of that, but he also didn't indicate how he was going to enforce that, because there would be an expense associated with that enforcement.
That is correct. Good question.
Who would we have? Our Mike Story? Would that be part of his duties to be an enforcer also, or?
But he's already overtasked. We're not getting to that.
That's correct.
Right.
So the issue would be is that you could basically put a non-binding resolution out. We could draft it that simply says, please, for a better word, don't water between the hours of 10 and 6 p.m. Each day. We could do that to be more of a suggestive, but the resolution could be more forceful because it's a resolution and not just simply a couple of words inside of a magazine. You could do that. You could be very restrictive. But I think to Jan's point, Council, if you do put some legislation that says you won't do that and you make that as an enforceable ordinance, then who's going to check it? Who's going to make sure compliance? It has to be, in my mind, it probably has to be a code enforcement because it's outside the jurisdiction of law enforcement. And although you could probably state that you could have the water superintendent to take a much more active role in that. So there is an element of this. If you make it enforceable, then who does that? If you want to be just more suggestive, then we can make a resolution to be much more suggestive.
And how would we know if that person had culinary or, how would you?
So the investigation would also be expensive.
Yeah.
That's some of the problem that Roy Secondary Water faces is that if a household has secondary water and they go out there and ticket them, if they're pulling hose off their culinary system, that ticket has no merit.
Right.
And so they can get out of it. Likewise, with us in the city, we don't supply culinary water to every resident. There's also Hooper water being with the Roy residents as well. So we'd face some of those same type of issues.
Yeah.
Right now, the restrictions that Roy secondary water has is just basically the timing. Some jurisdictions or other districts, they try to regulate what days you can water. Roy secondary water really doesn't get into that. It's just the 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. But
Right.
Weaver Basin Water has also have announced last Thursday that they're going to restrict the irrigation down by 20% this year due to the drought. And that's irrigation. They are not restricting anything at a culinary. So they have culinary lines that they're not restricting. But they also, Roy secondary is going to be shutting off the lines early to try to conserve water. So when we try to compare ourselves to the secondary system, we are different with our culinary lines. And sometimes I think personally, when somebody's watering with culinary water, they're a little bit more mindful because they're paying for that water. It's metered.
Right.
So
Yeah,
Now,
the
a
other
lot
piece
of
to me
working pieces.
of the enforcement, just as we look at the beautification enforcement or whatever you call that, it takes a long time to get it into a real enforcement process. And so would we be enforcing something that happened in July and December? And then it seems a little odd to be concerned about the water if we've got 6 feet of snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Which we hope we'll have next year, obviously. We can't predict that, but it just seems like the enforcement would be really, really difficult.
And we agree with you. When we've talked it over, enforcement would be kind of difficult. But just recognize the fact is we don't know what this year's going to bring.
I think we certainly ought to state to our public that we need to be mindful, conscious.
Okay. So here's what, if you're okay with this conversation, then something to ponder. We will not basically do anything unless there's some type of a direction, whether it comes from the governor, whether it comes directly from the districts to approach the city. But just be aware, given the nature of where we are in this drought, we could very well be asked from the water districts to do something. And maybe that something is not so much the enforcement as much as bringing awareness. And we may be able to consider just simply saying let's pass a resolution encouraging people to be mindful about the use of water, and particularly about the timing between 10 and 6 p.m. in the day, where in fact that's the biggest consumption of the water would take place in either a culinary or in a secondary water situation. So are you okay with that?
Can we draft a resolution?
And we would. We just won't implement it until we get a trigger. And the trigger may have to come from somebody that gives us the authority that says we're in trouble. But please understand, Roy City also delivers culinary water. We do buy water from the Weber's water district. But we do have 4 deep wells, in which case we do provide culinary water to the residents if necessary. And then sometimes during the year we do. So just be aware that you own that water. We want to make sure that also they're being conservative with that water as well. Okay. We'll draft one up. You won't see it until we get a trigger. If there's a trigger, then we'll present it to the council for approval. Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay. Next question, council. We've talked a little bit about this in the past, but the question is, would you be willing to consider holding a 5-year strategic plan offsite meeting? Now, the offsite could very well be in the administrative building, but the purpose of that is to allow the council to kind of give some direction to the city and the kinds of things you would like to see done in Roy City over the next 5 years. I'll give you a good example. When we held the last one back in, I want to say 2016.
And adopted in 17.
Yeah, it was 16, I believe, that we did it just before we got into the budget year. And a couple of things that was decided back then that was important. One, for an example, that parking place that's down there on 6,000? Roy City owned that space. And in that meeting, it was recommended to give more support to the rail trail. Why doesn't the city go ahead and consider sometime over the next 5 years putting in a parking lot and a restroom and, interesting enough, a bike repair station at that location? That came out of a strategic discussion. And today it exists in large part to that. Brian is no different than basically says, I like to do some things with Municipal Park this year or over the next 5 years. Or it may very well be things like we want to get a pickleball court, which you can go down to the Russell Park and see a nice pickleball court. A lot of the kinds of things that the council would like to see happen can happen and do happen during the strategic offsite. So would you like to see if we can get that in before you start to get into the budget cycle meetings, which are coming at you probably in the late May and June timeframe?
Very quickly, yes.
Yeah, Matt's already started sending out requirements to the department heads to start setting up the budget requirements. And remember, the key to this is, and I sent you a chart that kind of shows this, but it begins with a general plan. We then factor in a 5-year strategic plan. Then we have the year of implementation. And that year of implementation typically is stated in the budget. And in that budget, not only are you going to say, these are the things we want to spend the money on, but it tells them where the money is coming from and how much to spend it on. You approve that budget. And with that budget, if you want something done, it's in the budget language that gets it done, okay? And it starts with a strategic 5-year plan.
Can I ask who would be involved in that offsite meeting?
Yeah, all the city council members, all of the department heads,
Okay.
and the city manager, all the department heads and city manager, they're all involved in that conversation. And equally important, it's broken into 5 areas. We're going to be talking about the things that deal with traffic. If assuming you want to keep it in these 5 areas, you may choose to reduce that, you may want to expand it. It's going to talk about economical development. It's talk about, hey, how are we going to bring pride within our community? What kinds of things is going to help our community? Brian, like the municipal park, it kind of builds a modernization, if you will, in the kind of things of people. What are we doing for our people? The workers out there, we got them in terms of educational opportunities, things that we can do there, and also infrastructure. What kinds of infrastructure things? So the things that deal with infrastructure, I would expect to see Ross and his team to basically come to the strategic offsite that says, hey, these are the kinds of things we'd like to see improvements that are going to be taking place within the city. So they come in with the meeting, we discuss all these things, we set the requirements up, and then we present going into the budget year with the city the priorities that the council and the department heads would like to move forward with, and that becomes the integral part of the budget. And then when you approve the budget and Matt has a clear understanding of what's expected, then he implements and makes sure that those things in the budget are taken care of within that budget year. It's a good way to do it.
So Mayor, can I ask one more question just
Please.
about like past history? So like, I know the water meters were a long-term project. Did that come from this type of a meeting?
I can't answer that. Ross could probably answer that one better, or Matt. But that would be the kinds of things in terms of infrastructure that would come out of a strategic 5-year plan meeting, yes. So the key would be is, what do you want to do? And if you got some things you'd like to see done, this is a discussion item to focus on the things that we could do. It's open to the public if they want to attend, okay? But the focus is, what would you like to do? Diane, I think you had your hand up.
I just had one question is, I appreciated your strategic plan. I guess you call it a white paper, a short paper in it. When you're talking about these different pillars, I was just wondering how those are developed. Is that something that I guess you just did at the last one?
Right.
And as we look towards which pillars we're going to be discussing, for example, economic development and workforce development, that seems to overlap so tightly. I was wondering what kind of distinction is there that those were created as 2 pillars versus including them as one? And I can certainly look into this further, but I was just wondering some of those ideas of how those were originally developed and decided upon, and then that other question.
Yeah, good question. And I can surely speak a little bit from what I remember, but if you have, Ross was there, Chief Marino was there, Travis was in that meeting, Andy was in that meeting. That meeting, basically, when we had it 4 years ago, actually 5 years, I guess, next year, the big issue they had, and they wanted to focus on, what can we do for the employees? And so that employee thing that says, what kinds of things do we want to come out of that? And they put some plans together that really talked about the employee issues within the Roy City employment. And so that's what come out of that. And there were some really great things that come out of that conversation. And from that, they implemented some policy changes to allow that to happen. Economical Development talked more about what do we need to do in terms of trying to create an environment to make create an economical driving force within our city. Interesting enough, one of the things that came out of that year 5 years ago that really made a difference on traffic, because that was a pillar that was in that conversation. They said, we talked about developing a transportation plan. We actually developed, as a result of that strategic offsite, and it's in motion and approved today, a Roy City transportation plan that basically talks about active transportation needs, our trail systems, how we're going to look at wiring, lighting the facilities, looked at roundabouts. All of that was a product of that original conversation that took place 4 years ago that says we need to have a citywide transportation plan that we can implement to. So to your question, even the pillars, Diane, were really developed by that group of people in that meeting. And if we want to change those, refocus those, look at those differently, I say let the meeting kind of govern that. It will take a few hours of your day. I don't want you to think this is just a 1 hour session. It may take 3 or 4 hours. But the important part of this would be is if there are things you think are important that we ought to be doing over the next 5 years, then let's bring those ideas to this group and let's see if we can't get some of that stuff in motion, because it is by this effort that gets these in motion over the next 5 years to get done. And I promise you, the things that we talked about in that offsite 4 years ago have actually happened. I can point to those, I can show you what they are. They really made a big difference in Roy City, and not only to the employees, but equally important to the residents. And it worked. Are you open to the idea then that if Matt and I can sit down and come up with a plan that works for you, give you some dates that we can get together to have a strategic offsite?
I'm game.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Brian,
Yes.
you okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Jan, you good for it?
Sure.
Okay, then we'll take that as an action item from this meeting to develop a timeline and get that to you and see if we can't get some, before you really get heavy into the budget year requirements, see if we can't get an offsite to kind of give us focus on the things that are important to you. Okay, Council, last thing on the discussion items. I sent you a paper asking your thoughts in terms of getting us back to normal. I will indicate to you, there are municipalities, there are counties that are back to normal for all practical purpose. They do caveat that by allowing some inaction or interaction with Zoom meetings, but for the most part, they're meeting in council meetings or the meeting in county meetings. We're being a little more conservative because we're really concerned about being safe, not only to you, but anybody that will be attending that. And both Matt drafted up his city organization coming back to normal, and I sent to you a city council meeting coming back to normal, kind of a framework. I don't want to take away from Matt. He'll bring to you a timeline that's good of when we can bring the city back to normal operations. But I do want to get your ideas and thoughts in terms of what you think it would take to bring us as a council back together. And I've outlined some of those comments in that paper I sent you. Do you have any questions or any ideas or thoughts about that?
I think that you've done a nice job outlining it, Mayor. I think that it's nice that we've got the flexibility to be able to proceed. You know, one of the concerns medically is that we have a lot of people who have already had their immunizations, but they are now probably approaching the time when those immunizations may not be effective or as effective. And so, and of course, with all of the other concerns in the medical world, other states with the counts going up, the different variants. So I think it's nice that we're planning ahead and that we've got that flexibility because there are still so many uncertainties. So I think that you've done a nice job with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts, Council? Okay, nothing gets implemented until they start to see some changes. And those changes are governed by state policy, which means this. Even though on the 10th of April, the governor has basically signed a resolution or a law that simply says mandatory masks are no longer required, we still, as a body, still have the authority to simply say, we're going to keep the masks around, okay? In fact, really important that you kind of think that through, because I think even Matt's proposal of how we handle city council meetings and how the public will interface with the employees, we're still expecting there be some protection on the part of the people as well as our people, the residents as well as our people, the employees. And so that'll unfold and work. But at this moment, we'll continue doing Zoom meetings. But when we drop from moderate level to low level, and we're very close to that, and low level by the state standard says that we have less than 100, I believe, is the number over a period of time. I think I spelled that out a little bit in the document. Then we could drop into low level, and then our interaction becomes a little bit different. Example, Jan, when you held a workshop, a non-public comment workshop, and you had all of the council members in that room downstairs, you got a lot of things done, and it worked out perfectly. And I think the council, even though they were masked and we had the social distancing in play, I think it really allowed the council to say we could function very effectively in that particular setting when you're dealing with workshops and those things where you don't have a lot of public involvement. You can really get some things done very effectively. I miss those days. And as I was watching that meeting take place, I was very impressed with how you handled it, but more importantly, that you're able to bring everybody together. That sometimes it's hard to do that in this kind of a setting where you're dealing it over a computer screen. If we drop into low, we could offer that based on this idea. We can offer that as an option. And if any council member simply says, you know what, I'm not ready, we still allow then, okay, to have them Zoom in. We don't take that out of the conversation. So are you okay with that kind of a strategy? Now, we don't take no guards get taken out. Nothing gets, no protection is completely gone away with until the state itself, and I don't care whether the state or the entire country says the problem is gone, okay? And it may take months before that happens. But we keep ourselves protecting our people and protecting the council as we start to see improvements in terms of this pandemic. But at some point in time, when there's a declaration the problem is over, then we can come back to normal city council meetings. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, Mayor, can we still somehow implement a social distancing and
yes,
within that room or whatever you want to call it, that facility, and the mask?
Yes.
I would feel more comfortable with that personally.
Yes, and I agree. Until, in my opinion, there's a declaration that the pandemic is done, it's over, and that's done at the state level or by the highest levels in our health department, however that's defined. I say we expect people to have the mask and we expect the people to keep the social distancing going. I don't want to be the cause, personally, I don't want to be a cause by causing an infection to someone else. So I'm going to wear my mask and I am surely going to keep my distance in any public meetings. So as long as you're okay with that, we'll refine that a little bit, send it to you, and we'll kind of follow that pattern. But at any time you feel like we're moving too fast, speak up. Anytime you say, hey, I'm just going to go teleconference into the meeting, perfect. I don't want to take you and put you at any risk at all as council members. And I surely are going to leave it open to the public as they be engaged in our meetings, that they also have the right and the opportunity to teleconference in, or if possible, we'll bring them into a public meeting where they can basically make a public comment to us in a public meeting. So I just want to make sure we take this in baby steps. And if that's good for you, we'll work that as a council meeting, and then we'll wait for Matt to come in with his finalized plan in terms of how we're going to get the city back to normal. Okay? Please, Diane.
Just out of curiosity, I was wondering which room you were anticipating or thinking you would be able to arrange or organize for our first meeting back together.
Yeah, I will tell you, I've talked to Matt specifically, if we're sitting at a table, to put up the plastic barriers between us. We've seen that with the legislators. If you've seen that, I've seen that in other type of council meetings. So I think Matt's going to help us to kind of define that spacing to make sure we provide that protection. I'm not so sure, to be honest with you, Diane, to your question, we're ready to go back into the city council chambers. But downstairs, I think we have a little more room and a little more flexibility on some agenda items that I think we might be able to work downstairs. But I want to make sure the council has access to see what the public is thinking, anybody that basically wants to come in on a Zoom meeting, and to be able to see that on that television screens we got down there. So we got some staging we need to do inside the facilities to make it appropriate, but we're willing to take that on and work that pretty heavily to be ready. So when we reach those levels that are outlined in that paper I sent you, we'll be ready for.
Thank you.
But I want to make sure we have all the protection we can in place and keep it in place until this pandemic is officially over. And I'm not so sure, Diane, you're the medical expert here. I don't know when that will be. It could be months and months and months before we ever see that. And I'm in no big hurry to basically push us into a hazardous situation. So, and with your expertise in this arena, please use that medical expertise to help influence this conversation, because we don't want to do something stupid. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Council, that's the only thing we've got to talk about. City manager report.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. To piggyback on some of your comments, I did send the council and mayor council over a plan to slowly reopen the city offices. If you guys have any questions on that plan, please get with me. It really has to do with the transmission rate and also the availability of full vaccinations for employees. So anyway, if you have any questions, it's a tiered plan. Feel comfortable with it. Also, many of you went to the Easter egg hunt on Saturday at George Wallen Park. Very successful. Had a lot of great comments about it. But just wanted to get a big thank you out to Lizzie and the Parks and Recreation staff for all that they've done with that. They did a tremendous amount of work over there. So.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that, Matt, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Travis, Jody, Lindsay, that was just incredible. And I got so many great compliments coming back. It was well organized. They had a lot of fun. We actually there longer waiting to have the event than actually the event took place. But those kids, I'm telling you, that was the opening. If there was an opportunity, in my opinion, Travis, Matt, of saying we're finally breaking out of this pandemic, that occurred in that event. That was a lot of fun. Didn't get as many people as we've seen in the past, but we sure got a bunch, and they did it so professionally. Okay. There's only one thing I would ask that maybe you might want to improve on: the music. You know, a little Moody Blues. There could have been a couple of really interesting sounds that could have come out. I was not in tune with some of the music there, but I will tell you, it was loud. That part, it was clear. But I think I could offer at least something, something from Journey or something that could have really made a big difference. But that's a personal opinion. But a great event.
The kids loved the little kid stuff, though.
I know. That was wonderful. Those circles up there and how they managed that was genius. That was absolute genius. That was so good.
Yes,
you did well.
Agree.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
And waste as well.
Yes, waste management.
They're particularly
incredible.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, waste management just come through as they always do in this event. And man, I couldn't be more appreciative. And I told those guys over and over again that we were so pleased with what they did. They just did a phenomenal job to help us put that together. Just great effort on their part. So.
Also, we were awarded a grant through Wasatch Front Regional Council on 4000 South. This grant's for $225,000 to put a sidewalk across the street there on the tracks. So that's another grant that Steve Parkinson and Public Works applied for. So great work on that.
Where's that at again, Matt, just for the record?
It's over the railroad tracks to finish up the sidewalks on the north side of 4000 South.
Okay, north side of 4000 South.
Yep. So
perfect.
Right by the front runner station.
Yep. Perfect.
Also looking for some football coaches if anybody's interested. We are making a Facebook post about that.
I heard Ann's in.
Okay, Ann. All righty. And then also it has been requested, we have a committee with the BAB, the Business Advisory Board. They're requesting a budget, and I was just thinking, we have the council contingency budget. We did allocate some funding to YCC this year out of that budget. There's plenty of money there. They're not asking for a whole lot of money. They're looking for about $1,000 a year, but obviously the year's halfway through. But was wondering if I could use some of the council contingency to help those guys out with business cards and different things like that. So that money's already been allocated, budgeted, everything is sitting there ready to use. Just wanted to get your approval to do so.
Does that need to be a motion, Mayor?
Not necessarily, because it's already been budgeted, and the legislators, you're the legislative budget, could kind of decide. May I make a recommendation? Maybe it'd be best if the BAB will just simply come in with what they're asking, specifically what they're asking, and
I
then
do
send
have an
that to-
email from the chair
Okay.
that I'll
Would
send
you-
over to the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it today.
And then just give them response back, and then if you're okay with it, let's go ahead and consider that, if that's okay. But it's your money, it's coming out of your legislative budget.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's all that I have.
Okay, council, any other things you'd like to bring up? Anything you'd like to see done? Okay, hearing none, I just got one thing before we ask for a motion to adjourn. I will indicate to you, there is some drawings on the cemetery that Matt has. This is the proposed cemetery. We're not gonna, it's just a proposal, just some things we're working through. As you meet with Matt, and you do on a regular basis, would you just, he's got him in his office, just ask him, just says, hey, I'd like to kind of see what this new cemetery is looking like, what we're thinking about. You'll get the formal process. We'll make it public as we get closer to it. But we do have some colored renderings that we've got to move forward with those. And I want you to have an opportunity to kind of see those, what we're thinking of as we get this thing fine-tuned and moving in the direction. So next time you meet with Matt, would you please just take a look at what we're thinking, and then have some questions. Let's just send them to Matt. We can kind of work through that as we move forward. But Matt and I now have a task, and we've got to move forward that involves UTA. And I do not want to move going to UTA without you having some input of what we're going to be talking about. Okay. So, but go ahead and take a look at them. Pretty impressive. We got an opportunity to bring to the citizens what they've been asking for the last few years. And it's very close. It's getting closer as we speak. Anything else, council, before we ask for a motion to adjourn? Okay, now we got a RDA board meeting right after this. So let's go ahead and do I have a motion to adjourn the city council meeting? Diane, thank you. Okay. Brian, second. Okay, thank you. All in favor to adjourn this meeting?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We'll go ahead.